One of Australia's most famous places, Melbourne, is an absolute hellscape. It's a shithole, ladies and gentlemen, and there's no getting around that. In just the last year, Victoria, of which Melbourne is the capital, recorded 483,000 criminal incidents, an increase of 18.3% on the previous year. Now, here's the thing that a lot of people don't want to talk about, all right? Everyone sees Melbourne as this beautiful, progressive landscape where everyone protests every weekend and everyone's eating vegan fucking muffins in the afternoon. Melbourne is a shithole. All right, there's some beautiful people there, awesome places, great food, the coffee's fine, all right? Everyone talks about how good the coffee is, it's fucking just coffee. But here's what people won't tell you. There are so many people in Melbourne who are terrified, both in politics and in the private sector and in everyday life. They are terrified of upsetting the people around them, offending the people around them, that they won't make any changes. People are getting attacked on the streets. Last week, a lady got randomly stabbed by some fucking crazy person just on the street, okay? I don't know if you saw this footage. The person just ran up behind them and then just shanked them like they're in the prison shower. That's what's happening in this city because the government's refusing to do anything. The police have no power. Everyone there's a fuckwit. It's fucked. And I know I'm laughing, but I'm laughing because of how fucked up it is. And on top of that, teachers in Victoria can now decide if your child's trans or not. But anyway, that's beside the point. One of the huge issues in Melbourne right now is the crime. There is so many violent offenders there. Well, maybe not so many. In fact, only 1% of the population there is responsible for 40% of the crimes, but I'll get to that in just a second. Can you guess who that 1% is? I bet you can't. But Victoria has noted, the police down there have noted that 330 hardened, this is a quote, hardened youth offenders, end quote, were arrested multiple times for serious offences, including assaults, robbery, and carrying knives. Hardened youth offenders. And this will become a theme throughout the video. Why the fuck are these people on the streets? Also, here's a question. I'm thinking about bringing back merch. What would you like to see on some merch? Let me know in the comment section down below. Any idea is a good idea, okay? While I'm at it, Northern Beaches of Sydney and Port Macquarie, I've got shows coming up. Make sure you grab your tickets right now at isaacbutterfield.com. So this is the issue. People are carrying knives. Hardened youth criminals are being let out on bail. And shopping centres aren't safe anymore. Houses aren't safe anymore. People are in fear because their government will not do anything. The police will not do anything. The Victorian Premier, the governor, was addressing the media last week, telling everyone about how great her machete bins are doing. The bins, I remember this story, I brought you this story the other week about how much money they spent on these ridiculous bins where people could put like clothing donation, those big things, like we would call them a bin in Australia, other people might call them something else, but the goodwill bins, whatever you want to call them. Anyway, people were asked to put their machetes in there to stop knife crime. Anyway, the Victorian Premier, the governor, was talking about Jacinta Allen. Remember that name? Jacinda, who gives a shit? She was talking about how great those bins are doing, and then she went on to say how sad she was about another knife crime victim dying. So she hid that at the end of the speech. In fact, that lady who was stabbed on the street, they wouldn't release that footage for 2 weeks, even though they were looking for a violent offender on the streets. I wonder why. I think the craziest thing about all of this is a lot of the victims of these violent crimes are kids. Now, when we say that, a child has been affected by crime, we often don't see a photo because it's seen as a youth crime and the legal reasons, it's hidden, all that type of shit. I think that I understand why, but I think it's important to see who these people were or are. Whatever you want to call it. For example, and these were all publicly available through newspapers. So I didn't go out of my way to find these photos. But some of the people who have actually been hacked, sliced, stabbed to death, Du Ilbino Akung, who was 15 years old, and a 12-year-old boy named Chol Achik, were allegedly murdered. These little babies, man. Nearly 7,000 knives, illegal knives, have been seized in 2025. That's up 31% from a decade ago. About 1 in 4 homicides in Victoria are due to knife crime. We are facing a drastic issue. This is a big problem, and it only seems to be happening in Victoria. And we're about to find out why. The reason that this keeps happening, I think, comes down to this. Victoria Police say just 5,400 repeat offenders. That's less than 0.1% of the population are responsible for 40% of all crime. Less than 1% responsible for half of all the crime there. Among them are over 1,100 children who have been arrested more than 7,000 times combined. So yes, it seems like there is more and more crime in Victoria, but the fact of the matter remains the vast majority of the crime is being committed by the same fucking people, a lot of them kids. So why? Why is this happening? Number one, the reason that, all of the crime is happening is because you're letting people out. So I really had a solid think about why this happens. Now, there are some uncomfortable truths to this, and there are some that make a lot of sense. Number one, jails are too crowded, all right? There is not enough room for a lot of these people, and it costs the taxpayer a lot of money to house someone in a jail. There's also the thinking that you don't want to just punish people, you want to rehabilitate people, particularly young people. But how many chances do you give a young person? If they're continuously committing crimes, then surely you just have to lock those people up. They are fucked up beyond repair, I think. There are a ton of different reasons that we could probably come up with, and obviously the justice system is right there, but there's one reason I think that is the most offensive, but if we refuse to look at it, then we're just being ridiculous. There is a study that looks at the correlation between local government areas and their crime and the amount of people that were not born in Australia, and there is quite a bit more crime there. Sorry. The facts of the matter are this. If you are born in Australia or you have Australian citizenship, you are far less likely to commit a crime in Australia. Okay, does that mean that you do this because you are brown? No. Does this mean you do this because you are black? No. But it does probably mean you are maybe a little bit more likely to perhaps commit a crime if you are brought up in an area or a part of the world where crime exists every fucking day. And then you come to Australia and there's no war and there's no famine and there's no disease and everything's cool. But you're not just going to change immediately, are you? Another offensive reason that perhaps this happens is fatherless homes. A lot of these particularly kids who don't have dads or don't have decent dads, they're the ones committing these crimes. They're the ones doing these shit things because they don't have positive male role models in their lives. And that goes for both girls and boys, and probably they, thems as well. We are talking about Melbourne, so there has to be a few they, thems chucked in there. Don't worry about that. Unfortunately, without a father in the picture, a lot of things go out the window, particularly for the relationship between a boy and his father or father figure. The mother is there for so many important reasons. Let's say half of the great reasons, right? And the father's there for the other half. If the ladies out there are upset by that, you can have 60%, whatever. My point is this, that there are so many things that a father teaches his son and his daughters that not having them in the picture is extremely detrimental in many ways. Now, there are some people who are watching this right now who don't have fathers or have never had a father figure. And to the men who are, watching who never had a father figure, read my book, Better Man, great book. And to the ladies, I hope OnlyFans is treating you well. My point is this. There are so many important things that a father will teach you. He'll teach you how to deal with emotions. Well, a good father should anyway. Teach you how to deal with your emotions, how to deal with masculinity and be a good masculine person and be a good role model to your person. How to work hard, how to do all these type of things. At the crux of it, the male is responsible for teaching the children this, and the female is responsible for teaching them this. And that is the reason that having both parents there, given they're good parents, is so important. Unfortunately, in fatherless homes, crime rates go up. There's also things like generational trauma. If they grow up in a war zone, that might be a real one somewhere overseas, or it might be with one in the home, then they're probably going to, live their life like they are at war. So there's a lot of reasons that kids misbehave and adults misbehave. These kids that we're talking about, they go on to be these misbehaving adults. There's issues with rapid population growth. There's also youth gangs that are all white kids too. They're wearing bum bags and they're lads, and they're the most painful fucking people of all time. There's social media that's probably dragging kids into these cult-like groups. There's inequality, obviously. There may even be some racism in some areas, but I think that the biggest issue is We're not dealing with the problem children when they become problem children. And that probably stems from their fathers. But, let's say we get a kid into the justice system. Like, what do? Do we lock them up? I understand why people want them locked up, particularly if they're fucking violent, but that probably just makes them worse. But if you put them straight back out on the street and you don't make any changes, then they just carry on being fuckwits. So I don't have the answer. Maybe you do. I'd be very interested to know. Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't know why I said that in a rhyme. I've been reading Dr. Seuss to Atticus, and it's fucking with me head. Victoria really is descending into absolute shit. Right now, the violent crimes are through the roof, okay? That's very, very bad. Obviously, the youth justice issues are absolutely disgraceful. The Premier's a fucking goose. 9 out of 10 of the jobs created underneath this government were government jobs, taxpayer-funded jobs, like with the NDIS. All in the public sector, all paid for by the taxpayer. Okay, there has been a drastic reduction in the amount of private sector jobs in Victoria. So yes, it looks good on paper, but in reality, it's just costing the state more. The government also voted down protecting yourself and your own home rights to provide people with the ability to actually stop intruders when they come into their house. You compound that with the painful individuals that live in inner city Melbourne, and you just have a recipe for absolute disaster, because these people who vote for these fucking dipshit politicians are the ones out there protesting every weekend for whatever cause makes them popular at that time and lives in their Instagram bio, and they go back to their fucking 1-bedroom apartments and jerk each other off. That's what they're doing. That's what runs your political system in Victoria. Fuckwits employing fuckwits, voting in fuckwits. It's a fucking nightmare, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Am I on the money or am I way off? I'd love to know your opinion. Well, not yours, but someone with an education. Be a good motherfucker. Peace in the Middle East. Be extinct. Toodle au revoir. Bye-bye.